if you don't want to appear on camera. ScotlandIS is the trade body and cluster management organisation for the digital tech sector here in Scotland. And as part of the work we do, we are responsible for the cyber cluster. That's ScotlandIS Cyber, where we are bringing together the cybersecurity companies to help shape and drive the Scottish cybersecurity ecosystem. ScotlandIS has been responsible for the event coordination for Cyber Scotland Week since its inception, which was 5 years ago now. And I am delighted to advise that this year we have hosted more than 130 events which are taking place in person and online. But let's be honest, nobody is here to listen to me today. We are here to learn. And I'm delighted to say that we'll be joined by Tim Canning from Siker Cyber. There will be an opportunity for you all to ask questions, but I would ask that you keep those to the end or drop them into the chat box. You can also raise your hand at the end for questions as well. But like I say, nobody is here to hear from me. So without further ado, I pass you over to Tim Canning. Thanks, Tim.
Hi, thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along and joining us. As we're going to talk a little about defending ourselves from people that want to eavesdrop and maliciously gain access to our information, our sensitive information, when we're out the house. So with just a little introduction to me, he says, highlight the right window. So my name's Tim Canning. I hold the GICSP certification, which is an industrial cybersecurity certification, but I'm also a certified ethical hacker, certified network defender, and I'm a consultant trainer with Siker Limited. Our website is Siker Cyber. So I'm a cybersecurity skills development trainer, but I also try very hard to push cyber awareness into the community through things like local Facebook pages, talks in my local community, talks to schools, because it's becoming a more challenging world to stay safe in from a data perspective. That's not to say that we should be excessively paranoid, but just a little is probably good enough. I also work in the ops technology security consulting world, working with major upstream oil and gas providers, downstream companies, grid providers, that kind of thing. But most of all, and the thing that keeps me the busiest, is I am our family IT specialist in all things technology. So regardless of whether it's a smart telly or a tablet, it's up to me to fix it. So when I'm not doing that, I like to be in the water, preferably under the water, scuba diving. The picture is me when I was lucky enough 6 years ago to go swimming with dolphins. It was a bit of a once in a lifetime thing. But anyway, you're not here to hear me talk about me. We are here to talk about, well, initially Siker Cyber. Guess who forgot he'd put this slide in. So we are a dual function company. We started originally as a training organization, focused mainly on the industrial controls. We since moved into what you call operational technology, which is anything that uses data, does computing, but isn't something you'd ask your IT team about. So maybe the air conditioning in the office building that you work, the automated lighting system, the security and CCTV systems, or maybe it's just the thing that controls your fridge when you're at home. I don't know about you, but because I'm a geek in this space, I have an internet-enabled washing machine. I've never used the internet-enabled part of that. I don't really know why I would, but it was a gadget, it was on the list, and that's why I bought it, and did get into trouble for it when it arrived. But that's not the point. So this is a summary of our courses. We are also active in the consulting space. We will do assessments on industrial facilities, on building facilities. We're also active in the cyber essentials assessments for small businesses and organizations, and we can help you with remediation plans as well. Anyway, enough advert. What we're going to talk about today is, initially, I'd like to try and demystify Wi-Fi a little, and then I'd like to talk about how, as an attacker, as a criminal, I might go about eavesdropping your Wi-Fi when you're out and about in a public space. And then if you take the precautions that mean that I can't do that, how I might then otherwise misuse Wi-Fi technology so that I can still listen in on your sensitive information. And by this, I do mean things like banking information and personal sensitive communications, maybe medical information. There is a market and there is a use for all of that. So like I say, a little paranoia is good. Too much paranoia is unnecessary. And then finally, we're going to talk about how we defend ourselves and how we make ourselves safe, and we take our self-defense measures, just like we wouldn't walk down a dark street in a dodgy bit of town on our own late at night. We're going to take the same kind of sensible precautions with our data. And it's really easy. It doesn't have to be deeply technical, and this session isn't going to be that. If there are any terms that I use that you don't understand, or I use any acronyms or abbreviations throughout the way, feel free to stick something in the chat, poke us in the ribs chat wise, because sometimes I forget, and I apologize for that. It's what I do all day, every day. So some of these are things that are just words to me. But if, like I say, and please do ask questions. This should last about half an hour, 35 minutes, which in an hour session gives us plenty of time to talk about questions and explain more, or go into more depth if anyone wants to or needs to. You can contact me on LinkedIn. I have a profile there. I also have a Facebook profile, so feel free to fire questions through later on if there's something that comes up. I really am passionate about this. There are bad people out there that want to suck up and use our information, and if I can help you to stay safe, then I'm more than happy to. Okay, so first part of this is to split out what is Wi-Fi. I hear a lot of people using Wi-Fi when they really mean cellular communications or Bluetooth. Wi-Fi isn't a general term for all of it. It is a completely separate standalone thing. And one of the things we need to be clear on is that if you've got a mobile phone, it has 3 different radios built in. One of them is for 3, 4, or 5G, 3rd, 4th, or 5th generation mobile communications. The second one is for Wi-Fi, which doesn't actually really stand for anything. People say wireless fidelity, but in fact, when it first came up and came out in the early 2000s, actually doesn't stand for anything. But Wi-Fi is what Wi-Fi is. Wi-Fi and 4G, 5G are separate things, 2 completely separate radios, and they work very differently. The third radio that your device might have is Bluetooth. And again, that's not Wi-Fi, and it's not 4G, 5G. It's a separate short-range communication intended for dumb devices like keyboards. This is a Bluetooth keyboard. So those are the 3 radios that a phone will have. Your laptop probably only has 2 of them, although some of them you can plug a SIM into and they will have a 4G or 5G radio, but they are separate devices. Today, I just want to talk about Wi-Fi. 4G and 5G are actually pretty secure, and to the point where if I'm out and I absolutely have to do banking on the move, I will do it on 4G or 5G. I will turn off the Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth is for short range, so it's for your headphones and whatnot. So there's limited security issues there, although you should make sure you understand if anything is connecting to your phone with Bluetooth, because again, if we're in a crowded space, Bluetooth is something that I can use to connect to your device and maybe extract information from it, things like passwords and banking information. So, but if anyone tries to connect to your device using Bluetooth, you will get an announcement. So we don't need to worry too much about that. Provided you say no to all of that sort of thing, you'll be secure. Wi-Fi, on the other hand, is much more of a problem. So to begin with, let's just imagine a scenario. I'm in a coffee shop. I do this fairly regularly as a consultant, moving around the place. Might be sitting in a coffee shop. For whatever reason, I am a nightmare for forgetting to charge my phone. So I quite often find myself needing to use the coffee shop's Wi-Fi rather than my mobile phone's data through a tether. But even if I'm tethered to my mobile phone, if I'm doing it using Wi-Fi, I'm still just as vulnerable. But nevertheless, regardless of what Wi-Fi I'm using Wi-Fi. So I'm in a coffee shop, it's reasonably crowded. I'm in, a decent sized Starbucks or something like that. and I need to access data. So I'm going to connect to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. Now, the first thing to say is that this is not an end-to-end radio link. Wi-Fi is short range, generally in the way that we use it. So we will be connecting from our device to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi access point, and then it goes on to probably a telephone line. It might be a leased data line. It might be something like a fiber optic, depending on how rich the coffee shop is and what kind of area it's in and things, how busy it is. But nevertheless, it's some kind of physical connection. So Wi-Fi is only bridging the connection. And the idea behind that is very simple. It means that you can have lots of people sat at lots of tables, all accessing one Wi-Fi device without having to have an absolute mess of wires all over the floor that people trip over. So from the phone line, it's going to go into the wired internet, which is your telecoms provider. It's going to be something like, the BT, Virgin, Sky, one of these kind of telecoms companies, TalkTalk, PlusNet. There's a million different ones. But at the back end, it's all British Telecom. And it's going to cross what we call the cloud. And we call it the cloud because we don't really know what's inside it. BT do, and that's the main thing. They know how it works. As long as it goes in and it comes out somewhere near where we want it to, that's all we need to know. And then it's just the reverse. It's probably going to come down to your friend's home Wi-Fi router and then up to their device. Let's say you're sending an email from your phone to their phone. This is how it works. You write the email, you press send, the radio part of the device picks it up, sends it across the Wi-Fi signal to the router, where it's changed into a different kind of information and sent across the cloud, and then the reverse is true. And that's it. It's easy as that. Well, not quite. So let's imagine I'm in a coffee shop. I've got to send an email. Well, what happens? Within my device, what we now have is a bunch of data. We've got the information. I've typed some text into the email. I've put a destination address in, my friend's email address. The program automatically adds my email address because obviously they might want to respond and reply. So what happens is the email program does a bunch of sort of topping and tailing to the information. Then it hands it to the device, to what we call the operating system. But don't worry about that too much. Let's say I'm on my laptop, so it's Windows. Windows takes that, says thank you very much, and it breaks it down into small chunks because there are limits to how much we can send in each package of data. And the reason for that is in case we lose any. Sometimes along the way through the cloud, things get lost. So if we put the whole email in one packet and it got lost, we'd have to send the whole thing again. And that would take time. And we might only have lost a little bit of it. So what we do is we break it into small chunks so that if one goes missing, we can either just ignore that and it will be okay. Or in the case of an email, we'd just ask for that small bit again. So there's some techie stuff goes on about information that has to go beforehand, and there's information that's added to the back. We call them headers and footers. But again, your device is doing all that for you. These are standard, it follows rules. The device knows how to do it, so we don't really need to have to worry about it too much. But one thing we do maybe need to understand as a term is that's called packaging. And we generate a packet. So we have a packet of data, and what we're doing is we're creating lots of those. So each small chunk becomes a packet of data in its own right, with bits of information at the front that tell it how to get there, a bit of information about what kind of data it is, and then how to get back if there's a reply to come back. Windows gives it to the radio, and the radio sends it. I don't mean to patronize, and I'm hoping that this is just simplifying it, but there does seem to be a little misunderstanding about the fact that the radio is only getting it a short distance. It's not radio all the way to your friend's device. I wish it was, because then we could get rid of a whole bunch of kit. and probably save a lot of electricity along the way. But nevertheless, we are in a place where we are using a radio link to some physical device, probably mounted on the wall of the coffee shop. And if you look around, you'll see something with a box that looks like it's got aerials poking out the top. That's the Wi-Fi access point. That's sent up to our internet service provider, which passes it up to the telecoms company, which passes it back to your friend's internet service provider, who puts it on a phone line to their router, which converts it back into a radio signal, and their device picks it up. Hopefully fairly straightforward. The problem with this is that the way our devices work is we have what's called an omnidirectional aerial, meaning in all directions. Because my phone or my laptop doesn't know where the access point is, it can't broadcast a very tight beam signal that goes directly from my device to the access point, because it could be anywhere in the room in 3 dimensions. It could be on the ceiling, it could be near the floor, it could be right above me. So we have to broadcast it in 3 dimensions all around. So if we imagine now that we're looking down from the ceiling, and my laptop or my device is in the center of these circles, what we have is concentric waves of radio energy radiating out from my device. Now, when that gets to the access point, that's grand. That's fine. The aerial picks it up. And that means it's worked, because we could move the access point anywhere around this circle and the radio waves will find it. This is a representation of the donut. If you imagine the aerial on my laptop is a vertical spine through the center of this donut, the radio waves come out like this. So if I put the access point directly above me, it probably wouldn't work. But if I'm just a little bit off to the side, then it's going to be fine. So first rule of thumb is don't sit under the access point. That's a very weak joke. I'm very sorry. But the problem is that these radio waves are going out in all directions all of the time. So if I sit over here as the bad actor with another aerial, I can also listen to your information. So it's very easy for me as an attacker to sit in the coffee shop and listen to everybody's radio. And I can pick up your packets of information and I can put them all back together and I can read your email. Now that's fine if it's just saying, hey, look, let's meet for dinner at 6. But if it's some kind of sensitive medical information, or if it's something about banking, or if it's really something that you just don't want anyone else to see, or it might be confidential business information, anything that you like, I can now read that. If it's your password when you're logging into a website, that's sent exactly the same way. So I can just pluck that off the air. And now I know which website you were going to, what your username was, and what your password is. So now I can be you on that website. So at home, we use encryption. When you set your Wi-Fi up at home, you're probably going to be asked to set a join key, or your router will come with a password pre-configured. It's always a good idea to change that, but most of them come with a random password these days. It's not. You go back 15 years and they all came with the same password. So you could look up Sky Router and find out what the default password was, and then I could log into your Wi-Fi router. That's not so much the case these days. The little card that it comes with on the back, that will be unique. One thing I would say, a couple of my neighbours did, is they put the router on the windowsill in their front room because it was a nice place with that sticker facing out. So I could read it as I was walking past their window when I was going out for a walk in the evening. Fortunately, I know my neighbours quite well, so I was able to knock on the door and advise that, probably not. But so when you set that, when you type that join key into your phone, that's actually setting up an encrypted link. But if you're in a coffee shop, they don't do that. Almost universally, they don't do that. So you are sending unencrypted information. And that means, like I say, I can listen to it. And these are some tools that you can buy off the web. Anyone can buy these. I own both of them. and I didn't have to provide any information to the provider when I bought them. This device is a little external Wi-Fi access dongle. Originally, it was designed for laptops that didn't have Wi-Fi built in, but they've all had that for the last 20 years. Pen testers, penetration testers, people that actually try and break into networks deliberately with permission, have these. I have one because it is good for that kind of thing. But this is a very special box. This is known as a Wi-Fi pineapple. I'm not making that up. And you can buy them from a company called Hack5. And this is all of the attacks you might want to do in a box, and you just press a little software button and it will do one of them for you. You don't need to know how to do it. It really is like Wi-Fi hacking for idiots. It's designed for use by people that are trying to find weaknesses in networks, but like a chef's knife, in the hands of Gordon Ramsay, it's a tool. It's a very effective tool for making very nice food. In the hands of somebody with less noble intentions, it can be quite a bad thing. And of course, Hack5 don't know who they're selling these things to. They make you promise. There's a little tick box that says, I will not do bad things with this in the website. And that is literally the only security. Couple that up with this, which is Kali Linux, which is a software that you can download for free. And it's always been free, and they promise it always will be free. And this is the Linux distribution of choice for people that do pen testing or actual hacking. And it's free. And there are millions of videos on how to learn how to use it. You don't need to go on expensive courses to learn how to use Kali, although we do a very good one, as it happens. But so again, this is your hacker's choice of operating system. And one of the tools that's built within it is a thing called AirCrackNG, which is a suite of tools for breaking into Wi-Fi networks and snooping on other people's connections. It's really quite scary what's out there. And again, thousands of tutorials on YouTube and all over the web, various different websites to learn how to use it, all free. So this is why we need to understand that there's a lot of talk about, is this really a thing? Yes, unfortunately, this really is a thing. And in tricky economic times, people try and find other ways of making money. And this is one of them. So that's hopefully demystified Wi-Fi networks just a little bit. How do we protect ourselves? Well, the first thing is if you're out and about and you want to do anything in the way of sensitive information transfer, don't use a Wi-Fi network that you don't own. If you can, use your 4G data allowance, but recognizing that not everybody has an unlimited data allowance and data costs money. If you need to use a coffee shop Wi-Fi, then you need to be thinking about something like a virtual private network application. And now we need to kind of go into demystifying those a little bit, because that sounds quite techy and complicated, and it isn't. It is very simply an app that you download to your phone, and it does all of the rest. It will integrate itself with either Android or Apple, and then all you do is as soon as you make a connection to the coffee shop Wi-Fi, you turn on the VPN. End. You don't need to know what's going on after that. But let's talk about it anyway, because it's always nice to know where our information's going. And there's a couple of points that we need to make about choosing a VPN. The main thing that we're achieving with the virtual private network app is encryption. So the step where our information goes from our device to the coffee shop Wi-Fi, the bit that might be intercepted, snooped on, eavesdropped by some malicious party, is now encrypted. And one of the objections that usually comes back when I talk about VPNs is, well, I haven't got anything really very important. All of your information is important because it all goes towards building up identity theft. And there are brokers that will pay people to gather your information so they can start aggregate and build a profile on individuals. They keep massive databases. With the growth of social media, building those databases and finding out who's who, and then starting to build a profile on them is massively easier. But the other place that information will come is things like store cards and loyalty schemes, especially if they're loyalty schemes that don't seem to ever deliver you anything, or from minor websites, possibly websites that aren't able to pay for the level of security that you would like. So all of this data, whether it's sensitive or not, is important. You know, it could be, I'm saying to a friend, let's meet for dinner at 6. Nothing sensitive about that, except now they know my live email address. They know where I'm going to be at a certain time. They know I like a particular restaurant, and it's all being added to the profile on me that exists out there. So we need to encrypt it. So what's actually happening is the app on your device encrypts the information, passes it to the Wi-Fi access point. So it then is sent down the phone line through the cloud, but this time it's going to the virtual private network service provider's servers. And this is where it gets interesting, and why your choice of VPN provider is important. Because what they're going to do is they also have the keys to decrypt your information. Because you encrypt it here, someone has to be able to decrypt it, and this is where that happens. And then potentially it goes out onto the wider internet unencrypted, and that can be a problem. Now, if it's a banking app, it's the banking app encrypts. Messaging apps like WhatsApp and Signal will encrypt. So even when it's WhatsApp will encrypt it, the message, and then your VPN will encrypt it again. It will send it over. The VPN layer of encryption gets stripped off, but you've still got the WhatsApp and Signal encryption, or banking encryption, as it goes out onto the internet. And so it goes to your friend's Wi-Fi and then to their device, same as it did before. But at this end, when we cannot be eavesdropped, or we can, but the information is of very little or no use to the VPN provider. But there are two things that we need to take note of here. Some VPNs are paid for, some VPNs are free. If it's free, who's paying for the servers? These servers cost money. The data center costs money. The power, electricity, the cooling that all data centers need costs money. Owning a server in a data center is actually quite expensive. So if the VPN provider is providing the service free, how are they funding it? The general rule of thumb in all things internet is if it's free, you are the product, or at least your data is. So for me, it's always worth paying a small amount for a VPN application. However, if you've got a paid for antivirus like McAfee or Norton, or I hesitate to say Kaspersky because they're Russian, but they are a good provider. Their software is good. What else it's doing behind the scenes is open to question. AVG, Fortinet, there are lots and lots of providers. Usually they will provide, as part of the package, they will provide a VPN service. So again, that looks like it's free, but actually it's part of the overall package that you're paying for. So have a look. You might already be paying for one before you go and buy a NordVPN or ExpressVPN. Other providers exist. The other thing to say about VPN is a lot of people think a VPN is only so that you can appear to be in America and watch American Netflix, which is against the terms of service. But nevertheless, anyway, moving swiftly on. Yes, you can, but that's not what it's for. VPNs are about encryption at this end. The fact that they have servers in all the different nation states and conglomerate nation states of the world is a bonus and a side benefit. It's not what it's for. It does a really nice job of it. And I've obviously never watched Netflix in America, honest, but nevertheless. So again, what's happening here? The VPN app is making a connection to the firewall that is owned by the VPN provider. That's what's known as a VPN terminator. It's encrypting, passing it through the normal internet, but this is why we call it a tunnel, because it's effectively inside an encryption layer that goes from end to end. So that's why we call it a tunnel. When it gets to the firewall, the data is decrypted. Then if you want to appear like you're in America or somewhere else in Europe, or you're in America and you want to appear like you're in the UK so you can watch BBC iPlayer, which I do think is actually a legitimate way of using it, then you can choose a server that's physically located in that country. As I've said, we need to think about whether it's encrypted or not when it's on the general internet. So this is another question that you might want to ask your VPN provider. So what's really going on? Well, all the same things as before. If I write an email, my email program does a bunch of techie stuff at the front and back, and then passes it to Windows. Windows breaks it into small chunks, does some more techie stuff in terms of putting useful information on the beginning and end, and passes it down to the Wi-Fi radio, and that then sends it. But what's happening now is there's an intermediate step between Windows doing some work to make sure it can get there and back. It then passes it to your VPN app, which does a bunch of encryption, and then that gives it to the Wi-Fi radio. So this is getting in between two steps that existed before. You don't need to do anything when you load the app. It does all that for you. But now our criminal, our dodgy individual sitting there with a Wi-Fi pineapple, is still able to listen to our communications, but it can't make any sense of head nor tail of it. It's all encrypted. Doesn't make any sense. So like I've said, there are paid for VPN service providers, and they're usually pretty reliable. If you use a free one, you've got to work out how they're making it free. VPNs work to standards. There are rules that the Internet Engineering Task Force define, and one of the things that's allowed is you can have a virtual private network that is not encrypted. So again, be careful if you're signing up to a free VPN, make sure that it does actually encrypt, because one of the ways they might make it free is by not bothering with the level of computing power that it takes to encrypt and decrypt. Okay, if it's free, you and your data possibly are the product for sale. And bearing in mind, the VPN provider always has your unencrypted data. Now, let's say we're sitting in the same coffee shop and we've decided to use a VPN. So I'm sitting as the malicious individual, the bad actor, thinking, this person's clever. How am I going to get them to not be clever? How do I still get that information? Well, what I can do is I can set up a fake access point. And I can get you to connect to what would look like the same coffee shop Wi-Fi node. When you come up, when you get the little list of Wi-Fi networks on your phone, you might see two. Or you might see one that needs a password and one that doesn't. This is known as an evil twin attack. So my Wi-Fi pineapple, again, at the press of a button, will find nearby access points and it will copy them, all of the settings, but it will take out the need for a password. What's happening here is my Wi-Fi pineapple here is then connecting to the real one. So you would bounce to the next one. If you suddenly find your local coffee shop node doesn't need a password, chances are that actually you're not connecting to the real one. It can be difficult to work out when you're connecting to the wrong one. Now, the thing to say about this is most Wi-Fis are monitored by IT security teams, and these devices will be listening for anything else that starts advertising itself with the same name, this service set identifier or the name. It's what we see on the phone as Starbucks Wi-Fi or Holiday Inn Wi-Fi. So they will immediately either change the name or start to warn the staff in the shop that they need to be looking for a customer that's doing something naughty. And that Wi-Fi pineapple, let's face it, was going to stand out a bit if I put it out on the table. And that's what they sort of have to look like. You can do it with just a laptop, but it's tricky. And if it comes to the point where they can't find out who it is and kick them out of the shop, they'll just turn off the Wi-Fi. So evil twins, not such a big thing that you have to worry about. But I thought I'd mention it because, like I say, if you always go to Starbucks and then all of a sudden you're sitting in there and it doesn't need a password to log on when you always have done before, you might want to bring it to the attention of the staff, because that's a bit odd. What's much more likely is that you'll go for what's called a rogue access point. And I've actually done this at a meeting of some fairly technical professionals at the Institute of Measurement Control in Aberdeen, where we were in the Park Inn. The Park Inn don't call their Wi-Fi Park Inn Wi-Fi. They call it something else, a guest Wi-Fi or have a nice night Wi-Fi or something. It's something really cheesy. So we decided to set up a rogue access point when we were doing a demonstration of Wi-Fi security that just said Park Inn free Wi-Fi. And everybody connected to it. Every single person. Now, some of these are people that have got 20, 25, 30 years of security experience, and every single one of them fell for it. So if you do, don't feel bad. But if your hotel chain makes you pay for it, like Premier Inn do, and then suddenly you find Premier Inn free Wi-Fi, they do have a free service. But if you're in a place that doesn't, or the name looks a little wrong, then just check, give reception a call or go and ask the staff behind, what's your Wi-Fi called? They should have something on the desk or at the till in most of the places that you go to that tells you what the Wi-Fi is called and what password you need to access it. And again, it's about being a touch paranoid. Not much, just a bit. And that's pretty much me. We could go into this this is a thing that we focus on for a couple of days on some courses that we run. There is a lot to it that you can get at, but hopefully these are just a couple of little things that help you understand how it works and how to be a bit safer. So please be careful to choose the right access point. It's always worth getting up and asking. It might feel, I've just sat down with my coffee, or, I've just got into my room. What's the Wi-Fi? Oh, I'm gonna have to get up again. If you're outside the house, please use a VPN every single time. And if you can't use a VPN, use your 4G or 5G data by turning off Wi-Fi. Simple as that. But think about how your VPN provider makes money. If it's not paid for and it's not part of your prepaid service, if it's a free Wi-Fi, it's a free VPN, they're selling your data. Almost certainly. You're the product. Trustpilot and websites like that are quite good. And you might have it as part of your antivirus. One thing to mention is, if the worst comes to the worst, please use an HTTPS website. That means it's the hypertext transfer protocol with security. And that means it is doing some encryption between your device and the website. But it's of limited value. But if you absolutely have to, in a real emergency, please try and use an HTTPS website. And you'll know that because there'll be a little padlock in the URL bar, the address bar of your browser. And if you have to do banking when you're out, use the app, not the website. The banking apps include end-to-end security, end-to-end encryption, where the website doesn't necessarily do so. It's also a great way to make sure you've actually gone to your bank, not some dodgy website that looks like your bank. And if you've got any questions or you want any more information, the best first port of call on the internet right now today is the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. They have huge amounts of non-technical supporting information and question and answer sessions. And that's me. I've overshot by 12 minutes. I'm really sorry.
No, not
Take as
at
long
all.
as they want to
Thank you.
practice it.
Yeah, that was all really interesting, Tim. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think so I knew to use a VPN whenever I was kind of outside. But to be perfectly honest with you, I've always gone with a free one and didn't even give that a consideration about why is it for free. So I've definitely taken that away from today's session. So thank you very much. The floor is now open for any questions at all from anybody. So you can either, like I say, you can do that by raising your hand and asking the question verbally, or feel free to drop anything into the chat box if you would rather do that. Do we have any questions? Everybody gone shy?
Hope nobody's snoozing.
No, not at all. Well, a question from me, and you might not have a preference on it or be able to point in any directions, but are there any particularly good kind of VPN apps that you would recommend to anybody as the ones that they should, kind of be looking at in the first instance?
The one I use is ExpressVPN.
Yeah.
Like I say, there are others out there. NordVPN pop up quite regularly in the world, but for quite a long time I used Norton because it was included in the antivirus package that I used on my home systems.
Yeah.
I just started to find it was a little slow because they had an awful lot of people using it.
Yeah.
So I moved to ExpressVPN, but I found Express to be really good. It's not the cheapest. NordVPN, Tony, you're right.
Kirsty's commented there as well to say great presentation, Tim, and I think the tip of using a banking app rather than the website is a great one as well. So I agree with that too, Kirsty. I thought that was another good takeaway from here. I've got pages of scribbled down notes, Tim, so I've certainly found the session very beneficial.
Okay, Stu's saying Pronto VPN. So Proton VPN. Stu, sorry, I can't. Dodgy eyesight, old eyes. What can you do? There are a number of good ones out there. Trustpilot and these kind of trusted review sites are a great place to start. Or ask your local IT kind of techie friend, your dad's IT services guy, or mum's, obviously. Sorry.
So, well, if nobody has any further questions, Tim obviously very generously said at the start that you could feel free to link in with him. Oh, sorry, one last question has just popped up on the chat, Tim. Do you have any recommendations on what people should/could do to find if their information has been leaked or stolen? And then there's been a link to a website here. I have been
Pawned.
Yeah, pawned.
Pawned. Yeah. Well, the first thing is change all your passwords. I know it sounds horrible, but change any passwords for websites that have come up in the breach, and probably change any passwords. I use, and I would always recommend everybody uses, a password keeper. So KeyPass. I use eWallet. There's a free one, Password Safe, which I've used in a professional context, which is really quite good. And have a unique password for every website. And I know that sounds like an awful lot of different passwords, and that's why I have to use a password keeper.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that if your data is breached from website number 1 and you use, tim@canning.net, and the password is my password, what bad actors will do is they'll take those credentials and they'll try them in millions of different websites. They have automation. They can stick these things in a database, and it will just, that automation, that computer that's sitting on the internet is just trying that username and password in every website they've got in their database. And they pay people to sit there adding that automation. So finding more websites and adding the ability to automatically add credentials to them. And sometimes they'll get lucky because you've used a password on 10 or 15, 20 or 100, maybe 200 or 300, if you're like me originally, different websites. So now they can pretend to be you, and at least some of those will have credit card information stored, so they can then buy things using your credit card that they can either resell or return for cash. And what they will do is they will change your password on those websites so that you can't get in to change it. So if your information has been cloned, the first thing, unfortunately, you have to do is go around and change all of your passwords.
Yeah.
If you use a common password. I come up on have I been pawned for 20 or 30 different websites. None of them ever had any credit card information, and I was able to go very quickly and change them. If it comes up again with a new website, I know it's only that one password that's now been exposed. So I don't really have to worry about it too much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Last call for any other questions at all? Nope, don't see anything. Nothing popping up in the chat there as well. As I was saying earlier, though, Tim very kindly suggested that he was more than happy for people to connect with him on LinkedIn. So if you do have any questions, maybe come to you after the session has closed, then do feel free to reach out to Tim directly, or feel free to come via myself as well. You all have my contact details. I know sometimes it takes a while to digest the information from these things, and a question may pop up in a day or two, and feel free to reach out if that is the case. But thank you very much for attending today. Thank you very much to Tim for the presentation. Like I say, I've got pages of scribbled down notes here, so I've found it really, really useful. The session has been recorded, and when that recording is available, we will share that all with you, and it will be added to the Cyber Scotland Week website as well, so that you can access it there and share the link with anybody else who you think might be interested in the session today. But thank you very much, Tim, and thank you everybody for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Lots of thank you comments coming down the side, Tim. I don't know if you can see them or not, but lots of thanks.
Yes, that's really kind. Thanks very much. Good question, Reese. It's okay. I know, Reese. Right. No, thanks for the opportunity.
No problem at all. I'm just going to stop the session